Hello everyone, you're watching This World with me, Vikram, Chandra. What an eventful week it's been with the continuing collapse of the Pakistani economy. Also in one part of the world, and I'm talking about the United States, mass shootings put to question constitutional amendments and constitutional values. And another part of the world, India celebrates its 74th year of the implementation of the Indian Constitution. And we will, of course, focus on all the big global events and tell you what they mean. But this week, a special focus on something that has been the holy grail for medicine, the cure for cancer. We speak to two special guests who are doing path-breaking work in the field. Both are Indian origin changemakers. Both are relentlessly working towards finding the cure for cancer. And they both believe that the cure for cancer could come from India. Vivek Wadhwa has been a prominent global voice for exponential technology in general. He has met Prime Minister Modi on plans to find the cure for cancer right here in India. And our big newsmaker this week, one of the best-selling authors on medicine, Siddhartha Mukherjee, in this exclusive interview where he talks to us about how his startup in Bengaluru may have found the cure for at least one type of cancer. Like I said, some very interesting conversations, and we will be playing them out for you in just a few minutes from now. But first, let's quickly take you through some of the week's biggest headlines. Pakistan's rupee plummets to an all-time low of 255 against the dollar. This comes as the Shahbaz Sharif-led country grapples with skyrocketing food prices and hour-long blackouts across many of its major cities. Pakistan's foreign reserves have now fallen dangerously low. It only has enough to pay for about 3 weeks of imports. And authorities have withdrawn the cap on the exchange rate in order to avail of much-needed loans from the International Monetary Fund. Pakistan is facing a staggering 28.7% inflation rate, which has caused onions, for example, to be 500% more costly than the previous year. Pakistan had secured a $6 billion IMF bailout in 2019, topped up by another $1 billion last year. An IMF mission is going to be traveling to Pakistan later this month to discuss more funding. Pakistan's problems are far from over. There's now an argument taking place with India. India has now sent a notice on the Indus Water Treaty saying that Pakistani intransigence is forcing it to consider reviewing that treaty. And the implications of that could be massive for Pakistan. After a game of rock, paper, scissors, Germany and the US have both agreed to send tanks to Ukraine. The United States will be sending 31 M1 Abrams and Germany will be sending 14 Leopard 2 tanks. India's Republic Day was, of course, celebrated. The 74th Republic Day was celebrated on the 26th of January. Egypt's President Fatih al-Sisi was the chief guest of the mega celebration. Wishing Indians across the world on the occasion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that this time the Republic Day is all the more special as it is being celebrated during the Amrit Mahotsav of Independence. North Korea's capital city, Pyongyang, enters a lockdown following rising cases of, quote, respiratory illness, unquote. The Hermit Kingdom is yet to disclose its COVID cases and deaths. However, the country has declared victory over COVID in August last year, and it may now be thinking about that just a little bit. The US-based short seller Hindenburg Research has set its sights on the Adani Group, accusing it of what it called brazen stock manipulation and accounting fraud scheme. The report has been vehemently denied by the Adani Group, which has called it malicious and devoid of facts. Adani Group is mulling legal actions and says all of this is being done to derail the FPO of Adani Enterprises. However, the report wiped out billions of dollars in market capitalization for the conglomerate, especially on Friday. Pope Francis has criticized laws criminalizing homosexuality in an interview earlier this week. The Pope said, being homosexual isn't a crime, adding, God loves all his children just as they are. The Pope also called on Catholic bishops to welcome LGBTQ people into the church. And the nominees have been announced for the 95th Academy Awards. RRR's Natu Natu been nominated for an Oscar in the Big Original Song category. 2 Indian documentary films, All That Breathes and The Elephant Whisperers, have also been nominated for the category of the Best Documentary Feature Film and the Best Documentary Short Film, respectively. The winners will be announced on the 12th of March. But let's now go straight to our top story. Tell me one thing. What comes to your mind when you hear a mass shooting in America? Say some gunman has opened fire in people in a ballroom, or at school children, party goers, people praying in places of worship, or just people walking on the street, minding their own business. What comes to your mind when innocent people are shot by gun-bearing Americans? I'm guessing, like me, you too ask yourself a very simple, very basic question. Why does this keep happening in America? What explains this inexplicable gun violence in America? What explains the number of people who can just pick up a gun and go and shoot random strangers? On the 21st of January, a 72-year-old man walked into a ballroom in California and he shot whoever he saw. 11 people died. They'd all come out of their homes that evening hoping to bring in a great Lunar New Year. A monster had other plans for them. 2 days after this incident, 2 students were killed in a school dedicated to helping at-risk youth. A teacher was injured. There was another shooting later that day. 7 people were killed in Northern California. At the time of this particular shooting, California's Governor Gavin Newsom was actually meeting the victims of the ballroom shooting in a hospital. He said he was pulled away from their bedside only to be briefed about yet another shooting. Imagine that. Just a couple of hours after this incident, 2 people were killed in Chicago. All of this was on the 23rd of January. Then on the 24th of January, 3 people were killed in Washington. There were at least 39 shootings in the first 23 days of this year in America. More shootings than days. More than 1,200 people have been shot dead in the US so far this year. That, of course, includes suicides, homicides, but at least 120 of these victims are children. 120 children killed in gun violence. What explains this? Those leading the country don't seem to have an answer.
Only in America do we see this kind of carnage, this kind of chaos, this kind of destruction of communities and lives and confidence and a sense of safety and belonging, which we all yearn for, regardless of our political stripes.
But surely these are the people who should be finding a solution to this problem instead of just complaining about it, because it has gone on long enough and they've all failed at their job. And it's not them alone. Gun violence isn't new in America. This is not something we're talking about for the first time. In 2022, for example, more than 44,000 people died of gun violence. More than 47,000 in 2021. More than 45,000 in 2020. You get my point. Now here's my question. Why has the United States failed to address this problem? Which clearly stems from the fact that anyone and everyone can own and operate a weapon in the United States. This is obvious. The checks are lenient, the black market is rampant, but frankly, you don't even need a black market because the weapons, you can just go and buy them. And there's no limit to how many weapons that there are in the US. The result is this. America has more firearms than people. It's true. There are 120.5 guns for every 100 residents. 1.2 guns for every man, woman, and child and baby in America. And there's no way to tell which resident uses his weapon against whom and who all on any given day. Nowhere else in the world do you have a situation like this. And it's so obvious. That is the reason why you're having these mass shootings. That is the reason why you're having this gun violence in America. And you don't have it in any other country in the world. Which brings us back to the same question that I guess many people in America are also asking. Virtually everyone in America should be asking this question. Why is it happening? Now, I'd say it's a combination of 2 things. It's a combination of historic wrongs and present-day inaction. Historically, the Second Amendment gives Americans the right to bear firearms. It says, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Now, that's in the American Constitution, but that line was written in 1791, 232 years ago. At that time, there were no assault rifles. At that time, there weren't handguns. We were talking about, flintstocks. There were different types of weapons that were used. So you have to ask yourself, is it still relevant today? The gun lobby swears that it is, but at what cost? This right, the right to keep and bear arms, has become a threat to people's right to life in America. Meet Nandapu Devansh. He was killed in Chicago 10 days after he landed in the US from India. He was a fresher at a university there. His American dream was cut short, but he is unfortunately not the only person. Now, the obvious question is, can't American lawmakers do anything to change this dangerous reality? They can, but not many will. And that's because of the all-powerful gun lobbies in America. The likes of the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Now, this group alone sets aside $3 million annually to influence gun policy. And that is just the official figure. Unofficially, the NRA provides nearly $250 million every year, according to many accounts. Where does this money go? NRA funds are difficult to track. Some say they land up in the pockets of influential lawmakers. And that's one of the explanations for why the lawmakers are not willing to do anything about the American gun problem. And for more on this, we're now going to be joined by veteran journalist Bernd Debusman, who's a writer on international affairs, has been a Reuters correspondent from more places than I can count. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Now, when the rest of the world looks at a situation in the United States, unfortunately, every year it seems to be the same story. Every month it seems to be the same story. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. I don't think any of us can completely understand why this cannot be fixed. Why is it so difficult to have some sort of control on guns in the US?
Well, it's a difficult story. I think, the attempt to have control on guns, I think that train has left. There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population, which is now at 330 million. And getting these out of circulation is basically impossible. So what is happening, in many states, it's much easier to buy a six-pack of beer than it is to buy a semi-automatic rifle or an assault-style rifle. And every shooting creates another shooting. Every shooting also creates more profits for the gun industry, because after every single shooting, sales of guns go up.
Mr. Debusman, individuals carrying guns is one thing, and that's probably what the Constitution was talking about. But just take a look at the last 1 month. I'm sure that the framers of the US Constitution would not have intended a baby in diapers to be walking around waving a gun. And that happened very recently. They would not have been intending a 6-year-old to go into a school and shoot his teacher. That also happened just recently. This is not what the Constitution makers in the United States could have possibly been visualizing.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But changing the Constitution is basically impossible, because there are so many people who insist, this is our right. And the fact that a toddler in diapers wanders around the lobby of an apartment block says a lot about the parents, says a lot about how common it is guns are in American households. That 6-year-old got his mother's gun, a legal gun, from the cupboard. And she claims that no, it had a trigger lock, but obviously it didn't, because otherwise people wouldn't have died. So it's for me, it's like having COVID without a vaccine.
Well, Mr. De Usman, on that rather grim note, thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you so much. Let's hope that something gets done, but it does seem difficult.
Thank you for having me.
Well, while guns continue to kill people in the US, cancer is running amok in virtually every country. It is the second leading cause of death globally. Cancer kills some 9.6 million people every year. Every 1 in 6 deaths globally is a cancer death. I don't think this is something I need to stress upon. We all know someone who has lost his or her battle to cancer. A lot of us have lost family members to cancer, parents, brothers, sisters, cousins. And that's why it becomes news and big news when there is some hope that a cure for cancer could be found. Breaking these news for us is our next guest. I couldn't be more delighted than to introduce you to Dr. Siddhartha Mukherjee. He needs no introduction at all to most of you. Dr. Mukherjee is a cancer physician, he's a researcher, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. His book, The Emperor of Maladies, has really taught a lot of us everything that we know about cancer, where it came from, what its origins were, and how it can be fought. Joining us now from the United States, Dr. Siddhartha Mukherjee, welcome to the show. But Dr. Mukherjee, I have to say you taught many of us everything that we know about cancer thanks to The Emperor of All Maladies and, of course, The Song of the Cell. If any of you haven't yet read it, you really should be reading those books. But before I come to any of those books, Dr. Mukherjee, and talk about them, I really want to talk to you about your startup, about ImmuneMed, a little bit. Now, you seem to be doing this path-breaking research, interestingly, out of Bengaluru, right here in India. And it sounds as if you're getting closer and closer to a cure for some of the cancers that people thought were uncurable, like leukemia and lymphomas, after chemotherapy has been tried and failed.
So first, thank you for having me on. Let's begin the conversation with ImmuneMed. ImmuneMed is a company that I co-founded with a couple of other founders. And the idea was to bring cutting-edge cell and gene therapies to cancer. Now, cell and gene therapies don't apply to all cancers, but we've had over the years in the United States, including work from my own laboratory, showing that you can actually have a market influence on cell and gene, on leukemias and lymphomas. Now, remember that these leukemias and lymphomas, Vikram, are the cancers that are no longer responding to standard chemotherapy. So in some ways, they're called relapsed and refractory. Relapsed because they have relapsed after standard chemotherapy, and refractory because they are no longer responding to standard chemotherapy. So their prognosis is very dim. In other words, if they were given no other therapy, there's 100% chance that they will die from this disease. And it is often spread all over their bodies. Typically, the leukemias, this is a particular form of leukemia called BALL, B acute lymphoblastic leukemia. You don't need to know the details. But the more important thing is that it affects young children. So children age 8, 9, 10, it goes up to 20, 25, and there's certainly some rare cases. So these people have a whole lifetime ahead of them. They've already gone through 2 to 3 years of very intensive chemotherapy. And generally speaking, about 85%, maybe, give or take, are cured by this therapy. Cured as in the leukemia will never come back. This is one of the great successes of chemotherapy in oncology. The problem is what to do with the 15% that's remaining. And in a country of 1.3 billion people, that 15% can add up to a very large number because, even if you take 15% of a very large number, you end up with a very large number. So we and others have devised a T-cell therapy, a T-cell-based therapy that can achieve, and I use this word very cautiously, that can cure these people, these 15% of these remnant people who are no longer responding to standard chemotherapy with these T-cells. It's an extraordinarily complex process. T-cells have to be extracted from these, immune cells have to be extracted, genetically engineered and re-infused into these people. And we've seen some really miraculous results that we presented at scientific meetings that people, really blew people's minds away.
Now, I just want to make sure I understand all of that, so I'm going to go over it again syllable by syllable so we all get it. Now, we are talking here about some of the worst types of cancer, and where the therapies that you are working on start to come in are on people who've tried everything else and nothing has worked. So they are facing almost certain death. That's where you are trying to do what you're trying to do. So what percentage of those people are now responding to the new treatments to CAR-T, and what percentage of them are you being able to save?
So we've now treated about 15 to 16 people on a trial. The trial numbers are necessarily small. This is not a vaccine trial that's going to have 24,000 people. They're only 15 to 16 people, and that's the international standard. That's what the standard that the FDA and the European authorities use. Now, the success rate has been on the order of 77 to 80% of those people. We have judged them. The standard criteria is to look at day 90, so 3 months after at least 3 months after their treatment, to see if they have any disease left. And the answer is, in those 3 months, they've had complete remissions, no evidence of disease. We will do another assessment at 180 months. There are some kids, obviously, this is a rolling trial. There's some kids, one of whom I met, who's now 240 days out of their therapy with no evidence of disease left. So again, technically, almost a year, let's say about 9 months. Obviously, we'll continue to follow. So around a 70 to 77% rate. There will always be, this is a very risky therapy. There will be, as with the FDA, as with the European authorities, some patients will actually have a bad reaction. So we're very watchful of these reactions. But given everything, given the totality of lymphomas and leukemias, we've had about an 80% complete response rate in leukemias and about a 70-odd% in lymphomas. And when I talk about response rate, it's what's called a complete response. You don't see any evidence of disease left. And that total number comes out to be about 77 to 80%.
So 77 to 80% cure for people who are facing certain death is a very high number. So just to understand what it is that you're doing, in chemotherapy, you are essentially poisoning the entire body, hoping to kill the cancer cell before too much death is done. Now, these being liquid tumors, you can't actually operate on them in any way. So what you seem to be doing, if I understand you correctly, is you're extracting the blood from these patients, treating it in some way, genetically modifying it, and then injecting it back so it can go and kill the cancer. Is that a correct way to look at it?
So there are cells in your body called immune cells. These cells, their function is to kill other cells. And usually they kill cells when you have an infection. So let's say, I'll give you one example. When you have influenza, and perhaps even when you have COVID, these cells called immune cells, they're called T cells. These T cells go and kill the cells, natural cells in your body that are carrying the virus. That's their function. We and others have learned that you can actually change the direction of T cells and redirect them not to kill virus-infected cells, but if you genetically engineer them, you can kill cancer cells. So the way that's done is that the T cells are extracted from the body, and then they're genetically engineered in the laboratory, then they're grown in the laboratory, and until they reach a certain number. And then we give 3 infusions on day 1, day 3, and day 6. 3 infusions, and we monitor for about 28 days to make sure that there are no adverse effects. And then we do a repeat scan, and then of course we follow them on day 90, day 180, and so forth.
Now, you were saying you're really doing this on people who have not responded to chemotherapy or to anything else that was done to them. Wouldn't there be a case, though, because look, let's face it, chemotherapy does involve a lot of damage to the body, and you're talking about children for whom 2 years or 3 years of chemotherapy could mean considerable suffering. So why not try this first? Why not first try CAR-T and see if they may not need to go in for chemotherapy in the first place?
So we are very interested in trying this first, and if we did that first, it would be a path-breaking trial. It would change I would say it would change the entire world. We're very interested in doing this first, and we have the capacity. India has the capacity to deliver this first. So in other words, change the paradigm around. So instead of a child going through 2.5 years of chemotherapy and radiation, try this first and then give them a much lighter dose of chemotherapy. It makes total biological sense. It makes total medical sense. It will only happen, of course, if we prove the safety and efficacy in the trial that we're doing. But to remind you, the standard chemotherapy, although it's effective against children with ALL, the standard chemotherapy will cause all sorts of problems. So there'll be psychiatric issues, 2 years spent in the hospital. You can imagine, as a 6-year-old child, it's almost as if your life has been destroyed. There are growth stunting issues. These children don't grow because of the chemotherapy. There's a loss of cognition. So there's a documented loss of their capacity, their brain capacity, I would say, which is permanent. So they will grow up with some loss in cognitive capacity. In contrast, this therapy that we've pioneered in Bangalore, along with several other people, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. This therapy allows them, potentially, if it was given first, it's a 3-day infusion, and if they don't have a reaction, it's tolerated just like a blood transfusion. Almost no side effects, and then we follow it up with chemotherapy.
So, Dr. Mukherjee, if you're looking at cancer as a whole, and we're talking about a cure for cancer, you're applying your techniques in a certain type of cancer, ALL, right? Lymphomas, leukemias. But can therapies like this also be used for other cancers, which are also considered a death sentence right now? Stage 3 or stage 4 pancreatic cancer, for example. And the other cases of cancer where if this could be used and used successfully, then 8 years or 10 years from now, we may have a situation where we are saying we've cured cancer.
So the answer is yes. There are two kinds. There are many other blood cancers, including cancers that you may or not have heard of. Not unusual, I would say, lymphomas, such as diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. It's a cancer that's actually growing very rapidly in the Indian population for reasons that we don't know. Multiple myeloma, another cancer very common in the Indian population. If I remember correctly, every year there are about 40 to 50,000 new cases of multiple myeloma. Now, for solid tumors, so the ones I talked about are liquid tumors. For solid tumors, this particular variant of T-cell therapy, for reasons that we partly understand, doesn't seem to work as well. So we are trying modifications of this T-cell therapy. And in fact, in the ImmuneMed lab, just be very clear, our laboratories are not just sort of making medicines. We have a very strong research team. That research team is looking at pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, endometrial cancer, and trying to make what we call second-generation T-cells or second-generation cell therapies that will attack and potentially kill these other cancers. They have been very difficult to deal with. But there's a lot of hope. We have a lot of variations of this theme, different kinds of cells, different kinds of genetic therapies that will attack these cancers.
All right, Dr. Mukherjee, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that particular trial and report the results on that. Now, I bet you've read at least one headline on Chat GPT this week. That headline could have also been written by Chat GPT. Could it be this headline, Chat GPT passes the US law exams? Or this one, Chat GPT clears the medical exam? Or this one, Chat GPT clears Wharton's MBS exam? Or how schools are concerned about Chat GPT? Or how professors are saying that Chat GPT will reduce the value of education? And of course, this headline, Microsoft is investing in OpenAI, the company that has created Chat GPT. Now, many of you may be wondering, what really is Chat GPT and what is all the fuss about? But I'm going to try and answer that question very briefly tonight, and I assure you we're going to be talking a lot more about this in the weeks and years ahead. Chat GPT is an AI chatbot, but so are Siri or Alexa, right? So yes, that is true, but there is a reason why Chat GPT is different, and why AI is something that I will be repeatedly talking about on this program for a long, long time. Virtually all AI so far has been what is called narrow AI. What does that mean? Well, it can do one thing and it can do it quite well. I'm thinking about Google Maps here. But like curing cancer is the holy grail for medicine, AI researchers are looking for something called AGI, or artificial general intelligence. That's the sort of intelligence that humans have. Chat GPT isn't there yet, not even close, but it is a step in that direction. And that is why Microsoft has just invested billions of dollars into Chat GPT and why all those headlines are being created. But how is all of this going? Well, who better to talk to about that than Vivek Wadhwa? He's an author, an academic, an entrepreneur, and one of the leading thinkers on exponential technologies such as AI, Internet of Things, driverless cars, or cancer. He's just met Prime Minister Modi here in India to talk about technology and to talk about how the cure for cancer can come from India. I interviewed him a few days ago, just minutes after his meeting with the Prime Minister. He says he's worried about ChatGPT, although he does feel that Microsoft could be a stabilizing influence. He also spoke about the cure for cancer. Let me play that interview for you. Well, for many years, I felt that if you really want to understand what's going to happen in the world of technology and which way the world is going and which of these exponential technologies is going to take off, no better person to talk to than Professor Vivek Wadhwa. And we are really lucky that he's with us right here to talk to us. And I guess I'm even luckier because you're talking to us just after meeting Prime Minister Modi.
Yes.
So it's an honor, right? You're coming from...
I had an amazing meeting with the Prime Minister, and I've met him twice now. And he's just incredible how insightful he is. I mean, I talk to CEOs all the time of technology companies and other companies. He knows industries such as, he knows technology such as cancer and science and technology better than these CEOs do.
Okay, I want to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to walk around here and I'm going to ask you to outline for us what is happening in all of these great technologies, from genomics to genetics to AI to robotics, space and the rest of it. But I'm just going to start off with what you were talking to the Prime Minister about, which is really more healthcare, right? Cancer, saving the world and cancer. Tell us a little about that. What is it that you were talking to him about?
Vikram, I lost my dear wife to cancer. You know that, okay? It's been nearly 4 years. And the only thing that kept me going were her words saying, Vivek, help others. She said, make sure no one suffers the way I did. So my life's mission then became to cure cancer. So I had put together, with the amazing scientists from the United States who tried to help me save her, we put together a grand plan to cure cancer. Now, United States, I'm talking about Harvard Medical, Mayo Clinic, the top institutions over there. And I'm in Silicon Valley, I have access to everyone. We realized that we could not execute this plan in America because America, from a cancer health point of view, has peaked. There's so many barriers, so much protection that you can't make progress anymore. India was a place to be.
Hang on, you're saying that the cure for cancer could come out of India, not so much the US.
The cure of cancer will come out of India now. The United States is not capable of doing the big things that it needs to do. So I came here, I met Prime Minister Modi in Kevadia, Gujarat, and I was amazed that he really got it, and he said he'll do whatever he can to support me. So Venkat Ramachandran, who was Ratan Tata's trusted lieutenant, he was starting up a company to integrate India's cancer care system, and we agreed to merge our efforts and now to launch the most ambitious project in the world to cure cancer.
Okay, just want to understand, why are you saying this cannot be done in the US and why are you saying it can be done in India? And then I want to understand how you're going to cure cancer.
Vikram, in a nutshell, India has no legacy industry to protect. The American medical system is corrupt. It is, it's all geared about making money.
Very high fees,
ridiculous.
Everything dependent on insurance.
And you do anything and you get sued. Okay, the entire system is geared towards keeping it static so that these companies can make money. India is desperate now to catch up with the world in science and technology. It is desperate. The government is desperate. I know Prime Minister Modi is desperate to help his people. He cares about his people like no one I've ever seen. He is genuine. He really wants now to be there, to be no suffering, and he wants to uplift the population. You put all these ingredients together, and then the science and technology that we have here. We have the most amazing scientists in the world. Technology, India is the world leader in technology now.
People would say that the real research is not yet being done here. No, they're talking about getting foreign universities in here and research.
We're going to bring it here. We're going to bring it here because, you see, for this cancer project, so on the one hand, they're integrating the cancer care system and providing a path for anyone who has cancer. The second part of it is what I wanted. I wanted the largest clinical trial in world history where we gather all the data, biosamples, and information necessary to cure cancer. So we're gathering that. And what's happened now is that even Harvard, the top scientists from Harvard and Mayo who came with me here, they want to move their research over here because they believe that they can make breakthroughs here at a pace that is impossible in the United States. Keith Flaherty, I mean, the head of clinical research at Harvard, he is so excited about it. And then Aparna Parekh, she actually wants to move back to India. Her family is from India. She wants to move back here because she believes that she can make world-changing discoveries here.
Okay, what specifically is there about, people have been trying to cure cancer for a long time, right? You're
okay, now let's talk about, this is where it comes to technology.
Why do you think now it can finally, we've tried various things, immune therapy, chemotherapy, all of those things have been done. What is different? Why do you think we can now cure cancer?
Okay, let's go back to COVID, which is near and dear to everyone's hearts. It took 24 hours from the time that the COVID was sequenced for 2 companies to develop vaccines for it. It took months to test it, but 24 hours because they knew exactly what to target. When they had the data, they knew they had to target the spike protein, and using the microRNA platform, they could develop this thing. That is what's possible today. With cancer, we need to know what to target. For that, you need data. You need to have samples, you need to have medical histories, you need to have genomes. All of that we can do in India for a 10th or even a 50th of the price of whatever it costs in the United States. And then, we start moving, if you have all of this data and the biosamples here, and nothing's going to leave India. From a data security point of view, the highest standards in the world. But if you want to be able to do this research, you come to India. That's what we're doing. And the result is that you have now Japan's Rakuten that's moving clinical trials here and moving some research over here. And you have Harvard and Mayo all wanting to be in India.
No, but I'm just trying to understand the specific cure. So I get the data part of it. I get that you can do genome. Do you feel that the treatment will be from gene therapy, from genomics,
all of the above, and machine learning to understand all of this information, and then using some of the newer technologies to identify molecules which might work on them, and then being able to test them and implement them in a short period of time. India can do this within months.
Just to understand now the technology, let's just move from this to looking at the broader path of technology. The promise that there was a few years ago, I think when we last met, which was stem cells, genomics, CRISPR is here.
All is happening.
All of healthcare is going to change.
Yes.
Then the pandemic happened. The last time I met you was before the pandemic. Pandemic happened and suddenly we're not sure anymore whether healthcare is going to exist and whether we are going to have the promised land. Okay, are we about to cure all disease?
My first disagreement with you. Pandemic, we developed vaccines at a pace which was, experts were saying it takes 30 years to develop a vaccine.
Yeah.
Within 6 months, we developed a vaccine for that. India developed 2 or 3 different solutions, okay? So we basically broke all records in medical research. And that has laid the foundation for a whole series of new events by which we're going to cure every disease.
So I'm just trying to understand the genomic revolution. That's what I'm trying to say, the genomic revolution
synthetic biology, and then AI.
It's a reality now, you feel?
Yes.
Is it going to happen?
Yes.
When do you think we are going to say that through technology, we can find a cure for many of the things that have been plaguing us? You're talking about cancer, there are other diseases
in this decade. And India is going to lead the world in all of this.
Hang on, you said this decade.
In this decade.
That's a rather bold prediction, Professor Wadhwa.
Going on the record, let's watch and see what happens.
You are saying that we could have a cure for cancer.
Cancer is not one disease. Every cancer is unique. We will have a cure for many cancers. We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade. And they're going to come from India.
Okay, without wishing to sound skeptical in any way, because I also do believe in the power of exponential technology, people will say we're not being able to solve the common cold just yet, right? And we haven't been able to solve influenza just yet. And, we've seen the COVID.
But we solved COVID. We developed vaccines for COVID, didn't we? Yeah. Virtually overnight.
Fair enough.
Using new technologies.
So you're saying cancer 10 to 15 years is possible?
Cancer in the next 8 years is possible.
A cure for cancer?
A cure for most cancers, to be specific.
Okay. I think the last time I spoke to you was about 2-3 years ago. You gave me a copy of your book, The Driver and the Driverless Car. Right. And I remember you writing as a foreword to that this is the most exciting period in human history because what was once science fiction is now becoming a reality.
Yes.
I still remember that, right?
Yes.
Which are the other areas, other than healthcare, where that's going to happen?
We're going to have flying cars in this decade. Literally, Delhi to get to Gurgaon. Imagine now being able to take a drone and get there. In the next 5 years or so, you're going to have services that provide that.
Driverless cars, though, is still not a reality. It's a promise. It's a promise. But
Yeah.
you've seen what's been happening with Tesla. Tesla is not having the best period. People are saying that, okay, flying cars is a possibility, but even driverless cars hasn't yet been done.
Vikram, the next 5 years, this is running 5 years behind my own expectations. Yeah. But they'll work. I'm not convinced that Tesla will work because Tesla doesn't have the right sensors. Elon has done a lot of stupid things. I used to be Elon's greatest fanboy.
I know.
Now, if you follow me on Twitter.
I remember you driving me around in your Tesla and saying how great
now I'm
it
his
was.
biggest critic because Elon has gone off track. He's made many mistakes with the technology, and I don't think that I had owned 2 Teslas now. I don't think my car is ever going to have full FSD, full service driving. However, there are a bunch of other companies that are developing it. Waymo is making a lot of progress. There are dozens of companies worldwide that are working on it. Next 5 years or so, they'll begin to work. Now, when will they work in Delhi? I don't know if God could even drive in Delhi, okay? So that's a different problem.
Delhi, I think it's an unfair test to throw to anybody.
But on the highways, we will definitely have self-driving cars in the next few years.
Next part of technology that I want to talk to you about, which is where I think there has been some reasonably dramatic progress, is AI. Now, Chat GPT, I know there are critics, and I know you yourself have been a critic. You almost said that it can get information wrong. It got some information wrong about you. Do you think, however, it is starting to point to the fact that we're moving from narrow AI, which can do one little thing well, to a slightly more generalized form of AI? And that, of course, is the holy grail.
The models that we're talking about are defective. That they're not going to get to AI.
You're talking about Chat GPT.
Chat GPT and a lot of the existing models. Not that we're not going to make breakthroughs eventually, but we're nowhere near the AI of science fiction. However, this technology is amazing. I used it to write my last article for the Hindustan Times and for Fortune magazine. I just gave it the notes I wanted, and I put them together. I wrote a 1,500-word article with it within an hour. So on things like that, it's amazing.
I'm just trying to understand this. If you were to ask the average person on the street, he would say that in the last 2-3 months, you've actually seen more dramatic progress on AI rather than biotech. You seem to be almost saying the other way around.
There have been amazing breakthroughs on AI. The trouble is that the AI we have today is defective. It has serious flaws in it, and it has no guardrails. This is why I think Chat GPT should be removed from the market for at least 2 or 3 years until they build the guardrails around it. It is dangerous technology because it looks real, it looks accurate, and it makes major mistakes.
Dangerous, that's a strong word to use.
Yes.
Why are you saying dangerous? Is it because of misinformation or something else?
First of all, we can now generate misinformation on a very large scale. Putting out fake news stories, it's going to happen at a pace that you've never seen before. It looks to be correct and makes serious errors. When my son asked it about our family, Vivek Wadhwa and his family, it came up with a fictional wife that I had and children that I don't have. Okay, it hurt me and it hurt the family a lot because you know how close I was to my wife, right? That was hurtful, dangerous. But it also now is generating academic studies which look real, but they're fake. Okay, so
I know people who've written code using Chat GPT, which is authentic code, so there are certain things it can do really well.
Yes, that's the problem. It does something so well that's amazing, but there are no guardrails. There's nothing to prevent it from being used for evil. Yeah. That's what I keep worrying about. Technology can be used for good and evil. Here, there are no rules, regulations, there are no guardrails to prevent it from being used for evil, and you know that it's going to be used for evil before it's used for good.
That tends to happen in most. However, the real scary scenario with AI, and I want to know where you stand on this, is of course that perennial fear that this is narrow AI, you'll get to general intelligence becomes super intelligence, you'll have Skynet and it's going to wipe out the planet.
We're nowhere near that. Well, what's going to wipe out the planet is misinformation and us killing each other because we hate each other. Even in India, you have the left and the right that have been polarized to the extreme. In America, you have it. In Brazil, you had it, okay? That's because technology is now feeding us misinformation, getting us into bubbles, and really causing us to hate each other even more. So that's what's going to destroy us isn't runaway AI. We're nowhere near that. What's going to destroy us is misinformation. This is why I'm worried about Chat GPT.
So misinformation, I'm just trying to say, why do you feel that we are not heading anywhere close to general intelligence? Is it a goal that you think is never going to happen? Or will it happen, but at sufficiently far period?
It won't happen with the existing technologies.
Well, obviously, but this is Chat GPT 3.
I know.
Look at Chat GPT 40.
Chat GPT 40, I don't think it's going to get there because the platform, just like I'm telling you, I don't think Tesla will be able to get to full service driving because it doesn't have the right sensor, it doesn't have the LiDAR sensors, and it's basically off track. The same thing happened with the current generation of AI chatbots. But that doesn't mean someone won't develop an entirely new model, entirely new platform for it, which will be magic. I don't see that in the next 1 or 2 years, but after that, you never know.
Okay. There's also a theory, which I know you had espoused once to me, that with exponential technology, look, why are we excited about this technology? Because actually, it's leading to change at a pace faster than we imagine, and it's also leading to a pace of change faster than we can imagine. Now, what that means is that you could get a technological solution to many things that today we're very concerned about. Climate change, for example, who knows? Tomorrow you could have new technology that is limitless energy, and if you have limitless energy, then you have limitless water because you can desalinate water. All of those things become possible.
The cost of solar is dropping 15 to 20% every year. The cost of battery storage is dropping 15 to 20% a year. Move forward 5 years. What happens? The cost of putting solar panels on your house is 1/2 of what it is today, 1/3 of what it is today, and suddenly it's cheaper than buying it from the government, from the grid. It happens globally. So the clean energy revolution is at hand. Electric cars, within 5 years, every major auto manufacturer is going to discontinue selling petroleum-based cars because electric will be much cheaper. I mean, my Tesla doesn't require any
driverless cars may still be some distance away, but electric cars, that revolution is here
next
now.
5 years, it's going to happen. And India is doing all the right things to encourage this industry.
Yeah.
So that's happening. We're moving to 100% clean energy. And then we have all of these other advances in medicine, medicine/health, in robotics. One of the big problems America has right now is that it's dependent on China because of the cheap labor we have there. Well, guess what? In the last 2 or 3 years, robots can do what human beings can do. Watch the Boston Dynamics videos. Robots are jumping there.
Amazon's found, they're new robots which can 33x is the improvement in the robots to sort shelves.
So robots can now do manufacturing because we don't have to send goods to China for manufacturing. Even in India,
what's going to happen to everyone's jobs?
I'm looking for toys for my grandchildren. It's all made in China junk. So you could actually manufacture toys in India again. India could become a central hub for manufacturing using automation for the entire, Southeast Asia.
But you would argue that there are a lot of people out here, so what are they going to do? What's going to happen to jobs?
India has to rebuild its cities, infrastructure. I'm not worried about employment in India for the next 30 years because there's so much to be done in rebuilding the infrastructure. Imagine building new cities, smart cities. Imagine building, new highways for drones and pilots. All the jobs that are going to be created there because India has an abundance of talent. Indians are going to be building these futuristic technologies. I talked about cancer. I'm bringing the cancer project to India because India can do what the rest of the world can't do. I'm also working on transforming agriculture, a technology from Chile, from a company called Plasma Waters, that has made major breakthroughs in being able to generate 100% organic fertilizer and pesticide using water and air, bringing it to India because India has no barriers and it will readily adapt these technologies, and we have people who can take it all across the country. India has so many advantages. This is why I believe it's destined to rule the world in many, many of these areas of technology. India is going to be a net beneficiary.
So adopt technology changing the world, and you do believe that India also has an advantage in that?
Because the value system of India is to do good for humanity, right? Yes, there's some bad people here, but overall, part of our values and our culture is about giving back. So when my wife was leaving me, she said, Vivek, go and do good for the world, because she knew that's what kept me motivated. It's part of my value system is to do good for the world, to uplift humanity. That's how Indians generally are, because of their upbringing, because of their family values. So this is where the innovation has to be. And India can make a major impact on humanity.
Professor Wadhwa, it's always such a pleasure talking to you. I'm always excited to hear your vision of how technology is going to change the planet. And it's also good to hear you saying that you think a lot of that innovation is going to be happening right now.
And by the way, I'm your biggest fan.
Oh, thank you so much. You just made my year.
Absolutely.
Not just my day, you made my year.
Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
And that's This World this week on WION World is One. I'm Vikram Chandra. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with the biggest newsmakers and the biggest news stories from across the planet. Bye for now.